Okay, the truck is finally here. This is the 2024 Tacoma Trailhunter. I did not buy this locally here in Colorado. I needed it for the channel. I wanted to be one of the first people to have one of these so I could share some stuff on it. And I've just been waiting a long time, so I was willing to jump through some hoops to get this. The Toyota dorks out there want to know small details about these, and I don't think Toyota's been very good about sharing some of those, so I'm going to try to help with some of that as we go along. I've talked to the engineers a bunch at different expos, and I've sat in and asked questions and tried to get information to share with you guys. Of course, I wanted to know the stuff as well. So now I have driven this thing a bit, I've off-roaded it just a little bit, and I've cosmetically ruined one of the wheels. This is gonna be a very unique truck. I promise you guys, there's not gonna be another one like this, at least a 4th gen. There's not gonna be another truck like this for a while. I should have most of the big components rolling into it in the next 6 to 7 months or so. So it's gonna be a big project. So while it's sitting here and it's still in factory condition and pretty good condition, it's a little bit dirty. I went and met up with Jailbreak Overlander yesterday. He got to see this thing and I let him drive this thing and he was blown away. He's in a 4Runner on 37-inch tires and he was even impressed with this thing and how it was performing. And of course, he's impressed with the power of it. So his video will be out shortly on this if you want to see another little bit of a walk around. I just want to dive into this, why about the Trailhunter, and I'm going to share some information about this, future plans, and just kind of give you guys an idea about the truck and some of my impressions now that I've had it for about 10 days now. Okay, so one of the most obvious ones is the Snorkel. And I know a lot of people roll their eyes at the Snorkel. I've used one, I love using one because this does keep dust out of your filter. It helps a lot. Now this Snorkel in particular doesn't have the ability to have a top hat like the FJ does, which I do wish it did, because you can spin dust and it helps separate it from the air and it keeps even more out of the air filter. But either way, the fact that this thing came with one, I thought was a big win. So if you buy one of the TRD off-roads, drill a hole in it, put a Snorkel on it. Yes, they're cheaper. Yes, you can do it yourself, but you will kill the resale value. There's not a lot of people that love seeing a Snorkel has been installed on the side of a truck that they're about to pay money for. If I was gonna buy something like that, I'd be like, I wonder if he painted under that. I wonder if it's rusting. I wonder how good of a job he did, how sealed off it is. There's a lot of questions that come with it. So for as far as resale value goes, this was already done from the factory. This is somewhat of a limited trim and the resale value is just gonna stay there. The other thing is it does sound badass. Not only do you get the Snorkel on the Trailhunter, but you get a massive intake on this with a serviceable filter, so I'll dive into that real quick. So you can tell by my hands that this thing has a monstrous filter on it. I mean, this is something like you'd see in like a big diesel or something like that. So I gotta loosen a hose to fully take this off, so I'm actually not gonna do that right now because I don't have time. This is just crazy. Seeing that, I know that this thing is getting plenty of airflow. It's got a nice rubber seal, and even up on the hood, it says washable performance air filter, and there's care instructions with a QR code. I've shown this on the channel multiple times, but after we went to Baja for a week and I was pouring sand out of my Snorkel filter, my top filter. If you're following people and you're going down a road in like Utah or Baja or Colorado, usually it's pulling up through your fender well where all this dirt is getting kicked up. I'm excited about it. Some people roll their eyes about it. I think it looks great. I think it's a very functional piece of this truck. I'm gonna do water crossings with this, just not over the headlights like I've done with the FJ. I just need to wait that out. This is too new, too expensive, and I'm not that brave and I'm not that rich. Okay, so the next one would have to be the lighting. So this thing does have a light bar built into it right here from Rigid Industries, as well as the fog lamps, as I'm sure a lot of you have seen. These go from amber to white with the push of a button, which is pretty cool. So you just have your fog lights on, you press the button, it'll turn amber, or you press the button, it'll turn white, just to let you know which one's on. And I do think that that's a really sweet feature. The light bar, I have to say that I expected that to be more of a spotlight, but it is definitely more of a floodlight. It's kind of like having ditch lights, and in that aspect, it's pretty nice, but I did expect it to reach out farther. I'm not saying this light bar is useless, it's just more of a flood than I expected. I do like having a light that reaches out. Rigid is a respected brand. I've never really used their stuff before. I'm usually a Baja Designs guy as far as high performance lights, but I mean, I don't think most people are gonna complain about Rigid. So real quick, I do wanna touch on this roof rack. This was an add-on that I could not have taken off, and this was $1,200, $1,199. It's much better than Toyota's roof racks they've supplied in the past on like the TRD Pros for like the FJ Cruisers. Those were terrible. That was the most useless roof rack. This is actually a pretty durable roof rack with some real crossbars on it. You could put a tent or something on this. The only downside is the rear fender, the fairing is plastic and it makes tons of noise over 80 miles an hour, 75, 80 miles an hour. If you're in dense air in the Midwest, it can be even lower speeds than that, I learned. And it was weird because it's a big vibration, the mirrors shake and stuff. It's not good for the price. Toyota needs to fix this because everything in the aftermarket pretty much is cheaper than this. And people are not gonna be happy with that. Like that's almost something where I wanna maybe present that under warranty and see if there is a fix for that, because Toyota, you're gonna have people mad at you about this. So anyway, I just want to touch on that. I didn't choose to have this. I didn't really want to have this. I'm gonna do a different roof rack system, but I thought I would point that out. Okay, so something else from my perspective that I thought was awesome about these trucks is that they do come with billet upper control arms, and these are the Trailhunter ones, and they do look pretty beefy. It comes with a beefy suspension, and even looking at the components on the suspensions on these new ones, these are much beefier trucks in general. When I see people saying stuff like this is a mini Tundra, I think that they are right in the way of, like, I know they're referring to like the taillights because they're pretty much identical, but when you look at some of the beefy components on this, these are very stout looking trucks. We'll get underneath this thing here in a little while and you guys will be able to see some of this stuff, but it's astonishing how much of this got beefed up. And I know some of it is because of the torque output on it, but I mean, it's such a different thing. It's pretty impressive. Anyway, this comes with the billet upper control arms, the huge suspension from ARB, which does give this, I believe this has a 1.5 inch lift compared to the TRD off-roads. And then I think it's just an inch in the rear, if I remember correctly, something like that. So it's not a ton, but it does have more lift. And I'm curious if on this, I'm gonna be able to fit a 35 inch tire without any modification, except for pulling off that little plate that people have to pull off on these new Toyotas. So for those of you that don't know, on these new trucks, the Land Cruisers, the 4Runners will be the same way, the Tundras were this way. If you want to fit a bigger tire, instead of having to cut off the body mount like you used to in the past, there's something you unbolt. If you pull that plate off, you can now fit a bigger tire. So while we're sitting right here, the Trailhunter is 3 inches wider than the TRD off-road is, and the new TRD off-road is 3 inches wider than the previous generation trucks were. So this is 6 inches wider than the old generation Tacoma. So it is pretty noticeable. It looks like a big truck. We did some comparison with my dad on his first generation Tundra, and this has become a full-size truck. I've said that on the channel before, I've gotten blowback, but I'll have that up as just a really short separate video for you guys to check out. The reason the Trailhunter's 3 inches wider is because it has a wider fender here. Last here on the front of this truck is this has the sway bar disconnect. And I know some of the stuff that you can get with the other trims, but the problem was that I wanted to get one of these trucks sooner than later. And if you want to get some of the features on these trucks, some of the premium features, the sway bar disconnect, it wasn't like you can order this because Toyota doesn't do it that way. So if you wanted all of that stuff, it all comes on the Trailhunter. The Trailhunter is basically the premium off-road version, and that's the reason, one of the main reasons I wanted to get it. I wanted the hybrid, I wanted the sway bar disconnect, I wanted the suspension because aftermarket is still catching up. There's not that many options yet. And I wanted to have some of those features, and I'm gonna use this suspension as long as I can get away with it because I love that it has a warranty. It rides great, and I'm just gonna beat it up while I can. So as far as I know, the Trailhunter exclusively comes with the air compressor. It has like 7 different settings. You can preset different settings. So if you do 17 PSI on a typical off-road trail, you do 8 PSI in the snow, and then you run 34 on the road, you can preset those and hook this thing up. And it's pretty cool because the way this works is you put it on the tire, you set your preset, or you can manually adjust it as well. You press start and it will start doing it, and you'll just hear this thing going, and then it'll stop and read the pressures, and it gets them pretty much exact. In the event that this overinflates a tire, it'll even deflate it. So if it's trying to aim for 34 PSI and it goes up to 35, you'll hear it deflate. It's got a little air filter on it, which is pretty cool. They're serviceable. So you can switch that out if it ever starts to plug up. This is not an ARB air compressor. This is built by Toyota. I talked to the engineers at one of the expos, and he was telling me that this is a single piston compressor that should be comparable to a dual piston ARB, to the dual compressor from ARB. I've never owned a dual compressor from ARB. I know my singles, what I've used on the FJ for a while, it seems to work pretty good. I've only used this compressor a handful of times. It's kind of slow as far as what I'm used to because I have an air tank on the FJ. It is nice that it'll automatically just go to the desired pressure, get it exact. And another feature on this is if you want to deflate, it is slower than using like an ARB rapid deflation tool, but you hook up your hose, you go to your preset, and the way this works, whether you're inflating or deflating, is once you press start, it'll automatically adjust that tire with pressure or letting pressure out, and then you don't have to press start again. So once you hear that stop doing its thing, you unscrew that, put it on the next tire, it'll automatically read that that pressure's off and it'll start adjusting it. And then once you're done, you just press power off and it's good to go. So next up in the bed here is the 2400 watt inverter. Now Toyotas have come with inverters for a long time and they have mostly been useless because 400 watts, what are you gonna do with that? And they weren't pure Sine before. I have confirmed that this is a pure Sine inverter. This is one of those things that I feel like Toyota needs to be advertising because people care about that kind of stuff. Pure Sine makes a big difference because if you're using a portable battery station, a portable battery pack like an e-taker or a Blue Eddy or something like that. So one of the things about this inverter is that if you are using it, you have to have the truck on. So if you're at camp, you can have the truck on because it's a hybrid, the engine will often shut off. And so while you're using this, once that battery gets depleted, the truck will just start up and start charging itself up again. So there will be no interruption in power. I use the inverter to charge a portable power station as well as use it for an induction cooking system that I'm testing from Stoke Voltaics. I did this to see how often the truck would start up to recharge, and I'll have more information and impressions on this coming in future videos, as well as a separate review of this induction kit. I love having this. I think it's great that it's on here, and it's one of those things that is gonna really be functional for the way I'm gonna build this thing. So anyway, moving on from the bed. So this is gonna be an obvious one that a lot of you know about, but this thing has a steel bumper from the factory. This is the ARB. This truck's gotta earn its keep, so I knew I was gonna have to get out and start making content with this thing right away. And it's gonna take a while for the aftermarket to catch up because these things have so many sensors on them and stuff. Knowing that the Trailhunter was gonna come with this was one of those things that made me just wanna buy it. And I know that you can get it from Toyota for the other ones, but I think it's gonna take a while before you can actually do that. It's a very impressive bumper, and these recovery points are not messing around. These things are beefy. So something else on the rear end here is there's a lot of stuff floating around the internet right now, which is true, that the TRD off-roads are not coming with a full-size spare, which I do think is a bit silly, but the Trailhunter does come with a full-size spare. It comes with an 18-inch wheel, but it's not a matching wheel. So just so you know on that, but at least it comes with a full-size replacement. So if you get into trouble on a trail, you can have that. For me, that is actually gonna eventually come out anyway, and it will get mounted on the back of the truck. That space for the spare tire right now will hopefully go to a fuel tank for me. But anyway, I wanted to point out that yes, you do get a full-size spare on the off-road specific trim. I was even worried about that because I was starting to see it on the TRD off-roads, and I was like, man, that's not acceptable if you're spending this much on one of these trucks. You're not gonna fit a 35 under there, just so you guys know. If you do that, you're gonna need to get one of those, there's the ones that go in the hitch, the spare tire carrier, I forget what they're called, or just put it in the bed. But if you're going to a big tire like I'm gonna do, that will not fit in that location. So that'll be kind of a bummer. But anyway, I wanted to touch on it. Okay, so on the interior on these things, this is a big reason I wanted the Trailhunter. One, I think it looks beautiful. The interior looks great. And the other thing is, like, on the doors, it's got the soft touch up here. That's something that you get in some of the premium models. I know that the Limited comes with it, but I wanted some of that with my off-road truck. And the reason for that is because these 14, 15-hour drives for us have become more commonplace, and we spend a lot of time in these things. And so the FJ, you know, it's been great, but it's got just hard plastic everywhere, and having something like this to rest your arm on is a lot nicer. It doesn't really have foam. I was hoping it was gonna have a little bit of foam under this layer. The lower part does, but it's not like a bunch, but it's still nicer to set your arm on than just like a hard plastic piece. The other thing is that this trim comes with the heads-up display, which does not work with polarized glasses, I learned. HUD's really nice. It shows you your speed. It shows the last speed limit sign you went past, whatever that was. It'll show you your adaptive cruise control functions going on, and it gives you a few other warnings. I forget what it is. I know this stuff's been around for a while in other manufacturers, but for the Toyota crowd, this is a big deal. That stuff's nice. And then right here on this panel, you have, of course, auxiliary 1, 2, and 3. Now, the way Toyota did that, I don't particularly love One of them is up front under the hood. The second one is in here in the footwell. The third one is at the back of the truck. So I see why they did that, it makes sense, but I almost wish, I don't know a better way. It just seems like most people put a lot of stuff up there. But then again, that's my brain thinking. You need light bars, you need an air compressor, you need stuff that this truck already has. I do know for my particular setup and the way I'm gonna run this thing, I am gonna need more switches than just that. So I know OE panels or OE trim or whatever they're called, they make a replacement piece for this right here that's coming out, and you can put like an S pod in there and it looks really factory and it looks really nice. And so I'm gonna put 8 more switches up here. I don't know if I need all 8 of them, but I do need more switches, so that's my plan. So right here, it's nice that you have all of your buttons that you're gonna actually use. You get a blank here, you get a blank here. You can buy those switches on places like CH 4x4. You can get those push button switches. So whenever I do a setup in here, maybe I'll utilize those in some way or another. Another thing is the JBL system. These premium trucks come with the premium sound system. So it's awesome that it comes with a better stereo that I can hear, but that's the other thing that we need to touch on that is a huge upgrade. I don't know what other trims come with this. One of the big things on the Trailhunter is that this has acoustic glass and this has active noise cancellation built into the stereo system. So what that means is like when you go on an airplane and you put on Bose noise canceling headphones and it silences the noise around you, the plane's noise, that's what this is doing. And it blows my mind that that's possible. I don't understand that stuff. But when you're building an off-road truck, that is gonna make such a difference. If you really goose this thing and you get on it, you can hear that Snorkel. It's really loud with the window down. I mean, intentionally making it loud. You can hit on the gas, let off the gas, and it makes that fluttering noise. You roll up the windows and you do the same exact thing, you basically cannot hear it. It is amazing. Things that are gonna cause wind resistance, tire noise, stuff like that, it's gonna neutralize a lot of that. It's not ever gonna be perfect, but it's gonna be a hell of a lot better than the FJ is, because that thing is screaming going down the road. Okay, so let's take a look underneath this truck. So the Trailhunter is gonna come with like the high clearance, it's a plastic bumper, but it still gives you a little bit more of an approach right here to where it's kind of like the Viper cut sort of a thing. And then you get this sort of cut right here, which doesn't look much different than the TRD off-road to me, but I don't know if the angle is actually different or not. And then you get skid plates. So I was under the impression, I was thinking this was the case, that you got skid plates all the way back. The fuel tank is a plastic skid plate still. I don't love that. But these skid plates on here they seem pretty durable. I know that these are a high strength steel, but they are very thin. So time will tell how they hold up. They're much more of a skid plate than what I've seen from TRD in the past. So this is the Trailhunter specific skid plate, and I already changed the oil on this thing, and they did something pretty cool. So you got one of your bolts in the front and one of your bolts in the rear, and you take all the other bolts out and you loosen just these 2 up, and then the whole skid plate kind of slides off. So you're not fighting it when you're putting it up, which I have to do all the time on the FJ, and I've got those Ricochet aluminum skid plates. On this one, it kind of has like a hanging apparatus to help you put it back on and take it off and stuff. I thought that was pretty neat. But anyway, the Trailhunters do get these heavier duty skid plates. You don't get any special recovery stuff in the front. It's just got the tow hooks. These are not intended for recovery. These are intended for slow pulling it up onto a tow truck. Aside from that, you do get the Old Man Emu shocks, which are not a BP51. They're not an MT64. I always forget if it's 64 or 67. Maybe it's not even that. But anyway, it's not one of those, but it is a Trailhunter specific shock. So I don't know what they're gonna be good for as far as putting up with weight, but that's the point of this truck. So I like to think that they put some emphasis into designing that shock for people like me to actually load this truck up. And what I'm hoping to see in the future is a spring replacement for those of us that are gonna modify these things front and rear. I would like to see Toyota come out with a new, or ARB anyway, come out with a new spring for the rear. Looking at the front end of these trucks, this is not Trailhunter specific. These lower control arms are much beefier than what was on the old generation. Pretty much all of the Toyota dorks that I know personally have looked at this thing and been very impressed with how much of an upgrade it is structurally. It does look like it's a much more durable truck. Now we did move into some aluminum parts here, which I don't know how I feel about that, because when you do axles and you do seals and stuff over time, there's more of a chance of marring those. I know that you need to be careful with your bolts, because like Revere Overland recently in his Tundra, he had a bolt loosen up, which was from being worked on. It wasn't like a Toyota thing, but he had had work done, so those bolts weren't tightened all the way and it wallered it out. And so that's the downside with aluminum, is if you don't tighten it up, rather than just having like a cross-threaded piece there that might still hold, with aluminum, it will just start basically cheese grating it and all your metal will come out and you'll no longer have threads. So there's pros and cons to it. Just looking at the CVs here, this is a much bigger looking piece than on my FJ. I mean, it does look like it's more robust. So what you're seeing right here, this is for the transmission and the hybrid motor there, and the disconnecting sway bar function, because that is right on the cross member there. The sway bar disconnect has been something that people have not been able to get, and the reason for that supposedly is a part shortage, and they were saving them for this, and I know the Land Cruiser's getting them and stuff, but there's a limited number of those, and I knew the Halo trims were gonna get it, and so that was something that I personally wanted to get on the truck. So that was a big push for me. A lot of you guys are like, just pull the sway bar out. I don't like doing that. I've discussed that tons on the channel, so I'm not gonna dive into it anymore, but I wanted the sway bar disconnect system. I think it's great. And I am seeing on this skid plate as well, it also has these bigger holes here, so you can loosen these up and slide this forward and pull it down, which is a nice thought. It's a nice touch, because it makes putting these up a hell of a lot less difficult. Back here on your transfer case, you don't have much armor. It's got a little mini skid plate here, which looks identical to what the FJ has actually. I'm sure it's not the same part anymore. Surely that's changed, but it looks very similar. Your front drive shaft is a bit bigger than what I had on the FJ for sure, but it's nothing as impressive as the rear is, and we'll get into that here in a second. So the skid plate here on the fuel tank, this thing has a very long fuel tank and it's not a very big fuel tank. That is a downside to me. It's like an 18.3 gallon tank, as the old one I think was a 21 or something like that. I would love to have a bigger tank. And so as I was discussing, that rear tire is gonna come out and I will put an auxiliary tank there, assuming that's where Long Range America ends up fitting one. But either way, I need more fuel, because I don't wanna mess around with fuel cans this time around if I can avoid it. Okay, so this drive line is easily 3 times the size. It is aluminum, but this is 3 times the size of the one in the FJ. And the FJ's is steel, but the way that this is designed, I'm sure, is to put up with all of the torque, because this has basically damn near twice the torque of the FJ. This has no carrier bearing. Maybe on the 6-foot bed it does, but on the 5-foot bed it does not. The older trucks did have a carrier bearing, at least on the 6-foot beds. This one doesn't have a carrier bearing. I don't know if that's different or not, but I'm glad it doesn't, because that's one more component I do not have to worry about. But it is a tight fit where this is sitting, so it doesn't leave much room for more fuel at all. I don't know if they're gonna be able to squeeze much out of it. And the other thing about this fuel tank is the way it's shaped is it comes down alongside your lower link back here. So the fuel tank skid plate, the tank itself doesn't hang that low, it doesn't look like. Yeah, it's close. But I don't love how low the skid plate, or how low the fuel tank hangs. So this fuel tank, I do feel, needs a metal skid plate. I'm surprised the Trailhunter didn't come with it. It's not the end of the world. I'll be able to get one, and I will get one, but I was kind of hoping that it would come with one. And then the last skid plate that this truck has is the rear differential skid plate, and I've already marred that up a little bit. I was dragging rock down in Grand Junction yesterday. So on the Trailhunter, you do get this high tuck exhaust that dumps before the axle. This is an aftermarket part already, so you can source these from other companies. I don't know if the Trailhunter's coming with a different exhaust system in general. I doubt it, but maybe. But it definitely does come with a specialized tip back here. Okay, so on these trucks, of course, you do have a rear disc brake now, which we all knew that was coming. And then, how are these? Oh, these don't feel very durable. It would have been cool if the Trailhunters came with an upgraded lower link that could take some hits. This is pretty thin stuff. I don't know that I have complete confidence in that, but I'll tell you what, this bushing is massive compared to the old models, or like the old SUV. Like on the FJ, it is not this big. The shock here is the old man emu, as we discussed, but on the rear you get a piggyback reservoir to help deal with some of the weight and the cooling and stuff, which is great. This shock mount is in front of everything, so this is definitely gonna take some rock hits. So I need to source a skid plate for these, because I know that's gonna be one of the first things to take a hit. And I have to say, and this is gonna apply to all the new Tacomas, but if you take a hit from right here, it could potentially break this bolt loose. that is definitely gonna happen to somebody over time. So that's a bit of a, that needs some work there, but somebody will come up with a system to block that. So I'm definitely gonna get on top of that. And then your springs here, I don't know what these springs are rated for. These do have Fox caps up inside of them, even though this is not a TRD Pro. So the TRD Pros come with a hydraulic jounce, basically a hydraulic bump stop in the rear. This one's got rubber bump stops, and I think the TRD Pro comes with both. But anyway, in the spring seat now on these trucks, it's pretty cool because even all of the non-halo trims, as long as you get one that has the coil springs, because you can still get a leaf sprung Tacoma. It's the lower trim, it's the basic one. So if you guys want a cheap Tacoma, for those that are complaining about the prices, they made one for you. You can still get a very basic truck. So anyway, that is an option. Toyota's not forcing you to buy a Trailhunter. I think people have forgotten that. But on the TRD Pros, they come with a hydraulic bump stop, jounce, whatever you want to call it. On all of the coil sprung models, you have a threaded hole up there. So if you want to add one, you can literally get one and thread one in. So aftermarket companies will be making those for sure. They're going to jump on that. So you would take your spring out, thread that bad boy in, put your spring back in, and it's installed. There's no welding, there's no bolting, it just threads on. I think that's really cool. The rear sway bar does not disconnect, just so you know. Okay, so on the very back here, like I said, this is a full-size tire. And this thing does come with the Goodyear Wranglers Territory RT. Did I hit that? Yep, I was riding on my tire a little bit. And I wondered about that because when you look at these things from the back, it actually kind of looks cool, if you ask me. It's got this big tire that hangs down by the rear bumper here. But for those of us that are actually gonna use this thing, this tire is sitting, oh, I already took off spots on my hitch too. Is that from Toyota? Oh, that's me. So I already drugged the hitch on this thing. I'm just now seeing that. Because I did get into some rocks yesterday, like I was saying. But, yep, it definitely took a digger. Which I expected because these new frames hang so low. This is welded on. You can't do anything about this. I would be pleased to see Toyota come out with a very thin skid plate like this that you can slide in your hitch back here. That would be awesome. Because this is going to be the low-hanging fruit on these trucks because the Land Cruiser has this, the Tacoma has this, and the new 4Runner is going to have this. It's just part of the frame now. So hopefully somebody jumps on board really quick and makes a skid plate for that. Because yes, it can take the hits, but you know, I don't even like seeing that on the new truck. Whatever, it is what it is. I'm not too worried about it, but I would still like to get a skid plate there. Back to the tire. So this tire hangs so low that it looks cool, but it's gonna function as a skid plate, basically. As I can see right here, I've already hit it. So bouncing off the sidewall on your tire as you go down a trail is not the most ideal situation. So as I said before, by the end of the year, this tire will be out of here anyway. Okay, I'm getting sidetracked, but the rear of the truck is just as beefy as everything else. It looks fantastic. It looks, I mean, it's significantly improved when you look at it as far as how durable this thing looks. This looks like a hell of a truck. Time will tell, but I mean, it sure looks like it. And anybody that I know that's a big Toyota guy that's gotten underneath these, they're seeing improvements big time. But the spare tire thing isn't gonna work for me. It's probably not gonna work for a lot of people, but luckily there are other options on carrying tires, so we can dive into some of that. But I did just notice that I can see the air compressor from right here, so let's try to take a look at that. Okay, so there's our air compressor. Nice stainless steel line. It does look bigger than the ARB single. And I'm curious if there's a way to modify that to put a tank in there, because that would be ideal, because then you could get some really fast fill times if it would build up air pressure ahead of time. I don't know if you could do that or not. But anyway, at least we get to see what it looks like. It's pretty, and I'm impressed with the stainless steel lines. Okay, so something I forgot to go over while I was over in the other bay is the side lights here, these Sine lights. They're actually pretty functional, and they're actually pretty bright, as you can see. I don't know that Rigid makes those, but it's actually pretty neat at night. It really does light up around the truck. And they're actually surprisingly bright whenever it's dark out. Right now it doesn't look like much, but they're pretty good. They illuminate, it's kind of a round pattern, and you get 2 round patterns on each side of the truck, as well as the bed lights on the inside turn on, and then your upper bed light turns on. So the whole bed is illuminated, which is pretty cool. I don't know that those would serve me well enough for the way I like to camp, because it is low and it projects it onto the ground, but I prefer like my awning lights above me. But it is still nice because in a factory form like this, if I took this truck out on a trail at night, I could at least see stuff. And you can turn it on inside because it just turns on with your doors and it turns on with your bed light. So you can turn that switch on and then it's just working. I'm assuming this is pulling off the 12-volt system, so you wouldn't want to run them all night long or something like that. But they're there. I didn't know how useful they would be. They're actually pretty useful. It's actually a pretty nice little touch. The bed rack on the Trailhunters, this comes with these trucks as far as I can tell. It comes with all the Trailhunters. Some people like the look of it, some people do not. It kind of looks like a Ridgeline to me, and it's not very functional. Sure, you could put like a little roto packs on this or something, but I've just never been a person to carry a 1 or 2 gallon roto packs. It doesn't seem like enough fuel to me. You can't put a Max Trax on this little panel. I think if this was just a little bit longer, it'd be more useful, but I don't know. It's one of those things that I'm just not a big fan of. Toyota does make a bed rack, and you use part of this to expand on that. So this will become a full bed rack, but it's like $2,500. And I think if you want the HD version, it's like over $3,000. That's a lot for a bed rack. That is not happening for me. So this rack to me is just kind of something I had to pay for because it comes with the Trailhunters, and I feel like they could lower the price on the Trailhunters a little bit if they didn't do this. Okay, so now that we've gotten most of this stuff out of the way, let's talk about the truck and future changes that I'm gonna do to this thing. So I will be doing the AluCab mod cap camper. I'm a big proponent of the AluCab products. As you guys know, I've used my tent for years now. I've leaned it up against trees. It puts up with wind, water. It just feels like you're in a little house more than you're in a tent. And I appreciate that sense of security. I just sleep better at night, like quite honestly. Those types of experiences just reinforce my love for the AluCab products. I'm not paid to say that stuff. I'm just a huge fan of it. It is the real deal. And so I will be putting the mod cap on this. But I can't do that yet because of various reasons. So for now, I need a bed rack to run on this truck. Okay, so one of the first things I'm gonna do to this is I am gonna swap out these tires for 35. The truck is so long compared to the FJ that I think a 35 will be a nice middle ground. I'm hoping to do it in the next month or two. But I just wanted to check it out and try to do some off-roading with the factory setup to see how the truck does. It does perform well. And as I put out in one of my shorts recently, in one of my other videos, I've already scuffed up the wheel. Not the end of the world. This is a work truck for me. But I was planning on reselling these and getting some money back out of it, and I just screwed that up. I need a few more pieces of armor. I'm a little disappointed that it doesn't have a fuel tank skid, so I'm gonna find a fuel tank skid. I'm gonna rough up these factory skid plates. It came with them. I'm very happy with them. I'll see how much they can put up with. I'm stoked that it has a rear differential skid plate, so all that stuff, I'm gonna use it. But I do need to add a fuel tank skid, rear shock skids. I might even do front control arm skids, and it's not for the reason you might think. I'm not worried about rocks hitting them, but I do feel like the ones on the FJ have deflected branches before from tearing my boots. So maybe I'll do that. I'm not entirely sure. Front bumper when that's available, but I'm in no real big rush for a bumper. But this thing will be getting a winch, but I need the market to catch back up because with all of this radar technology, there's more going into this stuff. So I want all that to be functional because it is very nice driving this truck with those functions working. So as far as lighting goes, I do want to put more light on the front of this actually that reaches out farther because I do feel like I would like more spot power. This setup is great for in the ditches, looking for deer and stuff, but I want to see in the distance. So when I'm going 80 miles an hour, if there's an elk up there in the road, I can slow down because I just don't want to salvage my new truck. So in the next week or two, Goose Gear will be taking the rear seats out of this thing. So Goose Gear, seat back organization from Onward Supply, which is a new seat back organization thing that I discovered at the Overland Expo Pacific Northwest. And it's actually partially designed by a filmmaker. One of the main priorities of this truck is to make it easy to film out of. And fumbling through my camera stuff like I do in the FJ is not something I want to do anymore. So seat back organization, Goose Gear, and coming up with a system where I can mount my camera stuff effectively, efficiently. That's one of my biggest goals to do in the short term. Everything I do on this truck is going to be documented. I'm going to do a video on it, share with you guys what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. And there's going to be a ton of content around building this thing. And then of course I will be doing some traveling in it. Those videos take forever to edit, so you just got to wait for those. Usually in winter time is when I'm getting caught up on that stuff. But as the truck gets built, I will share that all with you. I'm not waiting around. I want this stuff done before it's got a ton of miles on it. So anyway, this truck is gonna be an incredible build on the channel. The patrons already know exactly what I'm doing. They've seen the rendering of what it looks like. It's gonna be badass. I'm gonna be working with tactical application vehicles on this build. I've got some work lined up for them. There's just some things that I know they can do better than I can. And there's also some things that with the channel, I just don't have time to do stuff anymore. It's wild how that's worked. I used to have to do all this stuff on my own, but now it's actually more advantageous for me to hand it off to somebody because my schedule is just crazy these days. I'm seriously working like 80 hours a week and it's stressing me out. So some of this stuff I gotta pass off to somebody else. Okay guys, so if you have more questions about the Trailhunter, post them below. This is gonna be the main focus on the channel for a while. I promise this is gonna be one of the coolest Tacomas you guys have ever seen. So stick around for all the build videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time.
As always, thank you so much for watching, and click one of the videos in the corner to check out more of our adventure, off-road, and overland related content.